Integers are everywhere. Investors use integers to determine whether they should buy Apple or Google stocks.
Scientists use integers to find sea levels of mountains and volcanoes. You use integers from the Weather Channel to determine whether or not you should wear a sweater today.
But what even is an integer?
The answer to that is simple. It's basically any whole number, a number that isn't a decimal or fraction, that can be positive, negative, or zero. Like with other types of numbers, you can add, subtract, multiply, and divide integers. Let's start off with addition. Adding positive integers is simple stuff. You've been doing it since you were young. Adding negative integers is just the same as adding positive integers, but negative. The sum of two negative integers will always be negative. But what about adding a negative integer with a positive integer? We can use the zero principle to understand how this works. The zero principle relies on a simple fact that you could memorize. Positive 1 plus negative 1 is equal to 0. With this principle, we can figure out that positive 2 plus negative 2 is still 0, and so forth. We can model the principle too, where a white circle is equal to positive 1 and a black circle is equal to negative 1. When they zero out each other, nothing, 0, is left. Let's take a look back at our original problem. Positive 13 plus negative 4. We can zero out 4 black circles and 4 white circles, and voila, we've got our answer. There are 9 white circles left, which means that the answer is positive 9. Yay! Time for subtraction. Like addition, you've been subtracting positive integers for a pretty long time. Subtracting negative integers is simple too. When you take away a negative integer from a negative integer, it's normal subtraction. Subtracting negative integers is just the same as subtracting positive integers, but negative. But what if you don't have enough negatives to take away? In this case, you would have to use zero pairs, a new method using the previously explained zero principle. Because the zero principle states that the sum of a negative number and that negative number made positive is always equal to 0, we can add as many zero pairs as we want. This is okay because no matter how many zero pairs you put in, the sum will always be the same. Now let's look back at our previous problem, negative 2 minus negative 3. We clearly don't have enough negatives, so we'll add a zero pair. Now we just subtract 3 negatives from 3 negatives and a positive. Therefore, our answer is positive 1 because that's all that's left. What about subtracting positive from negative? Let's look at this problem. Negative 3 minus positive 2. We don't have any positives to take away. Let's add 2 zero pairs to negative 3, turning negative 3 here on the left into 5 negatives and 2 positives. After we subtract the 2 positives on the right from the 5 negatives and 2 positives on the left, we remain with a difference of 5 negatives. Now before continuing on to multiplication and division, there is another principle you need to learn. Absolute value. Absolute value is the difference a certain integer is from 0. Therefore, the absolute value would always be positive. For example, the absolute value of negative 8 is 8, because negative 8 is 8 away from 0. Now, onto multiplication. We'll need to learn 2 rules to make multiplying integers easier and faster. The first rule is that if both types of integers are the same, the product will be positive. The second rule is that if the integers you multiply are different, then the product will be negative. Combine these rules with your knowledge of absolute value, and you'll become an integer multiplication pro. So what is negative 3 times negative 3? To start off, find the absolute value of the integers you're going to multiply, in this case 3 times 3. The answer to that is 9. The first rule tells us that our answer will be positive, and 9 is positive, which means that positive 9 is our answer. What about multiplying integers of different signs, like positive 4 times negative 3? The absolute value version of this equation is 4 times 3, and the answer to that is 12. Our second rule states that if you are multiplying two integers of different signs, the product will always be negative. Thus, our answer is negative 12. Now finally, division. Division is just the opposite of multiplication, like how addition is the opposite of subtraction, but all of the rules are still the same. If the two integers you're dividing are of the same sign, the quotient will always be positive. If the two integers are of different signs, the quotient will always be negative. Say our question was negative 12 divided by 4. The absolute value version of this is 12 divided by 4, which is equal to 3. Because the original question had integers of different signs, the answer will be negative, in this case, negative 3. Great, you actually got through everything! We hope your knowledge of integers expanded a great deal after watching this video, or at least learned a new method of approaching integers. We absolutely hope you enjoyed our video. Salutations!